Her voice trembled, low and resonant yet cracked by sorrow. No one could ever love me. I'm too big, too strange. I was born wrong. She lowered her towering frame, blue skin glistening in the golden light, and the soldier reached out his hand, tiny against hers, and whispered, You weren't born wrong. You're beautiful. Right before we start, if you've been enjoying these narrated sci-fi worlds, take a second to subscribe so you're always here when the next one drops. The alien world's dusk spilled molten gold across shattered columns and worn marble steps. The air carried the quiet of a city long abandoned, its grandeur hollowed by time and conflict. A lone human soldier, uniform still crisp though boots scuffed by endless patrols, moved through the ruins with cautious curiosity. His orders kept him close to the outskirts, but it wasn't duty that led him deeper tonight, it was the quiet ache of solitude. That's when he saw her. A figure too large to be real at first, seated at the base of a broken archway, a dark gown flowing around her like liquid shadow. Her skin shimmered in hues of deep cerulean, her long midnight hair spilling across the steps like silk. Her ears, sharp and regal, tilted slightly downward in weariness. Her amber eyes, once fierce, stared at the ground in despair. She was easily 3 times his height, her presence both majestic and fragile. And for all her enormity, she looked so small. He slowed his step, heart pounding as though he'd stumbled into some myth. She hadn't noticed him yet. Her hand, large enough that he could have stood upon her palm, rested limply on her knee. She exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a sigh, wasn't quite a sob, but something caught between. Are you? His voice nearly failed him. He cleared his throat. Are you all right? Her head lifted, sharp ears twitching. For a moment, those molten amber eyes fixed on him, disbelief flashing in them. She tilted her head, hair sliding like a river of midnight. You're human, she said finally, her voice deep yet soft, each word like a cello's note vibrating through the marble. He nodded. Deployed nearby. I didn't mean to intrude. Her lips curved into a bitter shadow of a smile. No one comes here. Not unless they are lost. He took another step forward, then another, until he was near enough that her shadow engulfed him. The size difference pressed on him. She sat slouched upon the steps, yet he barely reached her knee. If she stood, she would tower like a statue, dwarfing even the tallest soldiers in his regiment. What about you? He asked. Are you lost? Her hand shifted, dragging her gown against the stone, and she looked away. No. Just discarded. The word hung heavy. He frowned. Discarded? She drew a long breath, then spoke with a weary rhythm. I am nearing my 25th cycle. In my people's ways it is late. Too late. A woman of my size, of my station. She let the sentence fall apart. Her eyes closed, and when she spoke again, her tone cracked. No one wants me. No one will ever want me. I am too big to love. Silence pressed between them, only the faint hum of alien insects filling the void. He swallowed hard. Something in him recoiled at her words, not at her, but at the certainty with which she said them. He stepped closer until he stood directly before her, craning his neck back to meet her gaze. That's not true, he said quietly. You're beautiful. Her head snapped toward him, eyes widening. For an instant, she seemed unsure whether to laugh or scoff, but her lips parted in disbelief instead. Beautiful? She repeated, as though the word itself was foreign. Yes. His voice steadied. You shouldn't care what others think. Their fear, their blindness, it doesn't define you. Her hand twitched, then lifted slowly, hesitantly, as if to test his sincerity. Her hand stretched outward until her palm hovered before him. He could see the delicate lines in her skin, the faint shimmer of veins beneath that azure hue. Then prove it, she whispered, low and trembling. He raised his own hand, so small it looked almost comical against hers, and pressed his palm to her fingers. Warmth surged through the contact. Her breath caught. For the first time since he'd found her, her amber eyes softened, the faintest glimmer of hope sparking inside them. Neither spoke after that. They simply stayed there, human and giantess, their silhouettes framed by the dying golden light, two lost souls daring to bridge an impossible gap. The next night he returned. It wasn't supposed to happen. His squad had drills, curfews, endless duties designed to keep a soldier's mind occupied. Yet when the sky began to bruise with twilight, his thoughts pulled him back to the ruined hall like a compass pulled toward true north. She was there again, exactly as before, gown spread around her, hair like a cascade of midnight spilling across the broken marble. But something was different. Her posture was straighter, her amber eyes alert as though she had been waiting. "You came back," she said softly. "Yeah." He rubbed at the back of his neck. "Couldn't stay away, I guess." Her lips twitched toward a smile, faint and uncertain. She shifted on the steps, the movement causing the stone beneath to groan faintly. When she moved like that, he was reminded of her sheer scale. How every small motion echoed with a quiet power. Yet her gaze on him held no dominance, no superiority. Only quiet curiosity. They talked awkwardly at first. He asked her about her people, and she hesitated, as though unused to being asked. But once she began, the words flowed. "My family are laborers," she explained, her voice low and resonant. "We build, we carry, we dig. It is honorable, in a way. But it leaves little room for choice. Those born of wealth are courted, those born of strength are bound to work. My size ensures my fate. To my people I am a tool. Nothing more." He frowned. "That's wrong. It is tradition," she said simply, though the bitterness in her tone betrayed her. "When others look at me, they see labor, not love. If they whisper about wasted beauty. That no one would ever dare pair with someone like me. My body is too much." She looked down at her own hands, massive compared to his, curling her fingers inward as if ashamed. He stared at her a long moment. The sadness in her words pressed against him, heavy and unjust. Finally, he forced a crooked smile. "You know, where I come from, being tall is actually a good thing. People even wear shoes to make themselves taller. It's considered attractive." Her brows rose, sharp and elegant. "Attractive?" "Yeah," he said, chuckling at the sheer absurdity of explaining human fashion trends to a towering alien. "Though, granted, I don't think they meant this tall." He gestured up at her, and for the first time her lips curved into something genuine, a laugh, rich and melodic, slipping free of her chest. The sound startled him in the best way. He grinned wider. "See? That's better. You are strange, human," she said, shaking her head slightly, though her eyes gleamed warmer now. "Strange, but kind." Their conversations became a rhythm. Night after night he found her there, and each time their words wandered further. She told him of the fields she had worked as a girl, where stalks of grain barely reached her knees. Of carrying stones for temple construction, while the men around her muttered that she was more beast than woman. Of watching smaller, daintier women chosen as mates while she stood overlooked. He listened, anger simmering at the injustice. "They're blind," he told her one night. "Blind and stupid. Anyone who can't see your worth doesn't deserve you." "And you?" she asked, voice low. "Do you see worth, or pity?" He looked up at her towering figure, at the fall of her black gown, the curve of her shoulders, the way her eyes seemed to carry both pride and pain. He stepped closer until he was within reach of her hand. "Worth," he said firmly. "Only worth." Her throat worked as she swallowed, but she said no more. Instead, she shifted, reaching behind her and producing a massive tool, an iron hammer longer than he was tall. She laid it on the ground with a metallic thud that vibrated through his boots. "Lift it," she challenged. He blinked. "That thing weighs more than I do." "Lift it," she repeated, her smile faint but mischievous now. He braced, grabbed the handle with both hands, and pulled. The hammer barely budged. His arms trembled, teeth gritting, and finally, it shifted an inch before slamming back to the stone with a resounding clang. He collapsed onto the handle, panting, while she laughed, a laugh so deep and unrestrained that it echoed through the ruins like music. See? She teased. A toy for me, an immovable mountain for you. Yeah, yeah, he muttered, rubbing his sore arms, though he couldn't help smiling. Guess that makes me the weak one, huh? Her laughter softened into something more tender. She lowered her hand beside him, palm open in a silent invitation. He didn't hesitate. He stepped onto it, allowing her to lift him effortlessly until he stood in her palm, closer to her face. Not weak, she said, studying him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Different. And perhaps, different is exactly what I need. He held her gaze, amber light reflecting in his eyes. He didn't answer aloud. He didn't have to. In that shared silence, suspended high in her hand, something unspoken settled between them, fragile but undeniable. The days blended into one another, yet every evening felt fresh when he stole away to the ruins. What had started as chance meetings grew into expectation. She no longer looked surprised when he appeared. Her vast amber eyes would simply soften, as though something inside her had been braced all day, waiting only for his return. They began trading stories. He spoke of his home, of green fields and oceans that stretched forever, of cities where towers clawed at the sky. She listened, entranced, her sharp ears tilting toward him like sails catching wind. In return, she painted images of her world's hidden places, underground rivers that glowed with pale crystals, festivals where families danced in circles so large entire fields were trampled flat. You would be lost among us, she said one evening, her voice carrying a wistful amusement. Our festivals are made for bodies of my scale. You would vanish in the crowd like a pebble among boulders. He smirked. Maybe. But you'd keep me safe, wouldn't you? Her gaze softened. Always. The humor between them grew naturally. One night she offered him a bowl of her people's stew, a thick concoction simmering in a pot large enough that he could have bathed in it. She ladled him a portion into a vessel the size of his torso. He tried to lift it, nearly toppling forward under the weight, and she covered her mouth, failing to suppress her laughter. What do you put in this thing, Brix? He groaned, staggering under the enormous bowl before finally giving up and setting it down. Spice roots and marrow, she said, still laughing. It sustains us for long hours of labor. I did not think. Perhaps the portions are not suited to your kind. Not suited? He grabbed a spoon half the length of his arm, dipped it, and managed a slurp of broth that nearly drowned him. He coughed, spluttering, which made her laugh harder, shoulders shaking, gown rippling like dark water across the steps. When he finally wiped his chin, cheeks red, he pointed the spoon at her. Don't laugh at me. This is a strategic disadvantage. She tilted her head, amber eyes gleaming with mischief. Is that what you call it? Strategic? Exactly. He grinned. Feed me enough and I'll roll into battle. The enemy won't know what hit them. Her laughter this time was lighter, brighter, closer to joy than he'd ever heard in her voice. Another evening, she insisted he teach her something human. He thought hard, then decided on a simple dance step he'd learned as a child. It was a ridiculous choice, really. How could someone 3 times his height mimic human footwork? But she humored him. He demonstrated a few steps on the stone, shuffling and turning. She copied, moving carefully, her bare feet longer than his entire body. The ground trembled with each motion, yet she moved with surprising grace, her gown swirling around her. Soon she was laughing again, spinning too wide and sending a cascade of pebbles skittering across the ruins. You see? She said, breathless from laughter. I am a calamity in your world. Not true, he replied, grinning. You're just more strength, more grace, more everything. Doesn't mean it's bad. Her laughter faltered, her expression softening. More is not what men seek, she murmured. They seek less shadow, less presence, less to intimidate. He shook his head. Then they're fools. She stilled, amber eyes fixed on him, and for a heartbeat he thought he'd gone too far. But then she exhaled softly, as though releasing a weight, and her lips curved in the faintest, shyest smile. As their evenings grew longer, she began showing him her world in ways words could not. One night, they walked beyond the ruins to a ridge overlooking the valley. From there, he saw fields of crystalline plants glowing faintly under the twin moons, a landscape so otherworldly it stole his breath. "These fields fed my people for generations," she said quietly. "When I was a child, I dreamed of walking them with someone who would not look away from me. Someone who would not flinch at my shadow." He looked up at her. "I'm not flinching." Her fingers curled slightly, almost protective. Another night she brought him to her family's dwelling. It was humble, carved from stone, walls etched with the marks of generations. Her parents were away, laboring as always. But she showed him the hearth, the tools, the old carvings her mother had etched to pass time. He noticed how carefully she touched them, how even someone so powerful in scale moved reverently around the memory of her people. "You're proud of them," he observed. "They are all I have," she admitted. "But pride does not erase loneliness." He nodded slowly. "I get that." That night, as they sat outside beneath the moons, she finally asked him, "Why do you keep coming back? I am nothing your people would approve of. Nothing your command would permit." He met her gaze, unflinching despite her enormity. "Because when I'm here, it feels like I'm where I'm supposed to be." Her lips parted, words caught in her throat. She looked away, the faintest color rising beneath her blue skin, and for once she didn't argue. They sat in silence after that, human and giantess, framed by silver moons and glowing fields. The silence wasn't empty, it was full, heavy with unspoken truths neither dared break. And yet, somewhere deep within, both of them knew that their steps toward each other were no longer small or hesitant. They were becoming inevitable. The fragile peace of their nights did not last untouched. Whispers spread. Soldiers had sharp eyes, and villagers sharper tongues. He noticed the way others glanced at him during his patrols, suspicion glinting in their stares, though none dared ask directly. The unease pressed heavier each time he returned to her. One evening, as he approached the ruins, he heard voices already there. Harsh, mocking. His stomach nodded. "Look at her," one villager sneered, voice carrying through the cracked columns. "Sitting like a fallen statue. No wonder she cannot find a mate. Who would want a woman so monstrous?" Another chuckled cruelly. "Perhaps we should rent her as scaffolding. Let the children climb her instead. At least then she'd be useful." Her voice came next, low and shaking with anger. "Leave me." But they only laughed harder. He broke into a run, boots striking stone. When he entered the chamber, he saw them, two men standing boldly before her, smirking at her humiliation. She sat rigid on the steps, hands clenched, gown bunched in her fists, towering over them but trapped by shame. "Enough!" the soldier barked, his voice echoing sharply. The men turned, sneering when they saw a human. "And who are you to command us, offworlder?" one spat. "Someone who won't stand by while you tear her down," he snapped, moving between them and her vast form. The size difference was absurd. He barely reached their shoulders, and yet he squared himself like a wall. The men laughed, one shoving his chest with casual contempt. "Protecting her, are you? Then you must share her shame." His fist shot forward before he could think. The crack of knuckles against jaw silenced their laughter, leaving one man stumbling back, clutching his face. The other glared, half raising his arm before pausing at the sight of the giantess rising behind him. She had stood. Her full height dwarfed them all, gown cascading like a midnight waterfall down the steps. Her amber eyes burned. The men paled, their bravado crumbling as her shadow swallowed them whole. "Go!" she commanded, voice trembling with restrained fury. They fled without another word. When the echoes of their retreat faded, silence lingered. He turned, chest heaving, to find her staring down at him. She looked shaken, not from the men, but from him. "You should not have done that," she murmured. "What, defend you?" he asked, wiping blood from his knuckles. "I couldn't just." "They will talk." She interrupted, her voice cracking. They already whisper. Now they will spread it further. That I sit with a human. That I let you touch my hand. That I... She broke off, lowering her gaze, trembling with something rawer than anger. That I am desperate. He stepped closer, his voice firm. Let them talk. They don't know you. Her eyes lifted to his, pain shimmering in their depths. You do not understand. In my culture, a woman unchosen by her 25th cycle is cast aside. A burden. Every year that passes marks me further as unworthy. And now they will call me pitiful. That I turn to a human because no one of my kind would have me. The weight of her words struck him. He saw the raw wound beneath her pride, the years of being overlooked, belittled, reduced to her size. He clenched his fists, wishing he could crush the cruelty out of the world for her. You're not pitiful, he said softly. She shook her head, looking away. I am a giant human. Too large to fit in your world, too strange to belong in mine. What life could you imagine with someone like me? His answer was immediate. A life worth living. Her lips parted, eyes widening slightly at his certainty. You think I don't see you? He pressed, voice steady though his heart thundered. I see your strength. Your laughter. The way you care for your family, even when they can't give you what you deserve. I see the woman, not the size. And I don't give a damn what anyone else says. For a long moment she stared at him, silent and unmoving. Then, slowly, she lowered herself back onto the steps, the vast sweep of her gown pooling around her. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders trembling, not with shame this time, but with something fragile and unfamiliar. When she lifted her head, her amber eyes glistened. You make me dream of things I swore I would never hope for again. She whispered. Do not be cruel. Do not give me hope only to leave me. He stepped forward, reaching for her hand once more. His palm pressed against her fingers, steady, unflinching. I'm not leaving. Her gaze locked with his, searching desperately for any crack in his resolve. Finding none, she exhaled a long, shuddering breath. Then, almost timidly, she curled her arms around him, not to cage, but to cradle. In that vast, gentle hold, she finally allowed herself to believe. The orders came down like a hammer blow. His squad was being recalled. Within 2 nights, every soldier stationed on the outskirts was to regroup at the main garrison, then prepare for transport off-world. He heard it in the briefing room, the commander's voice crisp, efficient, merciless in its finality. No room for protest. No room for delay. For the rest of that day, the soldier went through the motions, packing gear, checking weapons, running drills, but his mind was elsewhere. Every step, every word from his squadmates blurred into a dull haze, until all he could see was her face, her amber eyes lit by twin moons, her voice trembling when she said, Do not give me hope only to leave me. That evening, he slipped away long before curfew. His boots carried him over cracked paths, through weeds grown tall among ruins, until the familiar silhouette rose against the twilight. She was waiting, as though she had known he would come. The way her head turned toward him, sharp ears tilting, made his chest ache. You look troubled, she said softly. He swallowed. We're being recalled. The words fell heavy, sinking into the silence between them. Her expression did not change at first, only her posture, a slight tightening of her shoulders, the slow curl of her massive hands into her gown. When? She asked. 2 days. The quiet stretched until it threatened to choke him. Then she laughed, but the sound was hollow. Of course. Just as I dared to think fate had grown kind, it reminds me of my place. She lowered her gaze, shadows cutting across her sharp features. It seems I was right all along. No one remains. That's not... He stepped closer, his voice shaking now. That's not what this is. I don't want to leave you. Her amber eyes snapped back to him, flaring with anguish. Then what would you do? Defy your commanders? Abandon your duty? Your kind does not forgive such things. You would be cast out as surely as I have been. I don't care, he said. The words came before thought, raw and reckless. What I feel when I'm with you. He broke off, breath catching in his throat, then forced it out anyway. I'd give up anything to keep it. Her lips parted, trembling. For a moment she looked away, as though afraid to meet the weight of his vow. When she finally spoke, her voice was scarcely more than a whisper. You would give up your world for me? I would, he said firmly. The silence that followed was unbearable. He thought she might laugh at the foolishness of it, dismiss his words as desperation. Instead, she rose from the steps, her immense figure stretching into the night. Slowly, she bent down, lowering her hand to him. Come, she said, her tone heavy with something deeper than command. If you mean what you say, prove it. Walk with me. They walked until they reached a cliff that overlooked her homeland. The fields of crystal plants below glowed with pale fire, rivers winding like veins of light through the valley. They stopped on the cliff's edge beside her, then she sank to her knees so that her face was near his height. This, she said, sweeping her arm to the horizon, is my world. The world that has no place for me. And yet when I walk here with you, I feel less alone. Her amber eyes softened, pain shimmering like glass. But you must go, soldier. Your kind calls you back. You will leave me as all others have. He shook his head. No. I'll find a way. Even if I have to slip away in the night, even if I have to face exile, I won't let them decide this for me. Her gaze searched his face, desperate, almost disbelieving. You would truly choose me, when all else calls you back? Yes, he said simply. The words hung in the night air, firm as stone. She trembled, then lifted her hand again, placing her hand against his chest so carefully it barely pressed his uniform. If you stay, she whispered, you will change everything for me. You will be the first to stand beside me, not in mockery, not in pity, but in love. Do not promise lightly. He wrapped his hands around her hand, grounding her touch against his heart. Then let me promise it loudly. I want to stay. With you. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only her eyes betrayed the storm inside her, fear, longing, disbelief, and a fragile, growing hope. She bent her head lower, so close that the wind carried the warmth of her breath across him, and whispered, Then I will hold you to it, human. And may the stars curse us both if you break it. The promise hung heavier than any oath he had sworn in uniform. And as they stood together on the cliffside, soldier and giantess, it bound them more tightly than any command could sever. The night after his vow, the soldier did not sleep. His squadmates packed their gear, shared quiet farewells, polished boots that would march away from this world forever. He went through the motions beside them, but his mind was elsewhere, haunted by amber eyes and the trembling weight of her whispered words, Do not promise lightly. When darkness thickened, he slipped away again, his pulse hammering as if he were deserting in truth. The ruins rose against the starlight, silent and expectant. She was waiting. This time she did not greet him with surprise, nor with her usual guarded amusement. She stood already, her gown flowing around her vast legs, her figure cutting a statue's silhouette against the moons. You came, she murmured, voice low and steady. I told you I would. Her gaze lingered on him, searching. Then she exhaled, a sound deep as a drumbeat. Then let us speak plainly, soldier. I cannot endure shadows any longer. He stepped closer until the tips of her toes loomed beside him like pillars. Speak plainly, then. Her throat worked as she swallowed. I am afraid, she said at last. Afraid of what I feel when you stand near me. Afraid of how it grows every time you smile at me. Afraid that I have already given my heart to you, though I swore I would never give it to anyone again. The words shook him, leaving him raw. He had suspected, hoped, but to hear it spoken aloud was something else entirely. He drew in a breath. You're not alone in that, he said softly. Because I feel it too. Her amber eyes widened, her lips parting in astonishment. I love you, he said, steady and clear, the words falling heavier than any oath he had sworn in battle. Not in spite of what you are, but because of it. Because of your strength, your laugh, your kindness. Because you make me feel alive in a way nothing else does. She covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders trembling as though struck. No, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. You cannot mean that. You cannot. I do. He stepped forward, raising his hand and placing it on her hip, on the edge of her gown. His voice grew fierce. Do you think I don't know what this means? Do you think I don't see the way others look at us? I don't care. I choose you. Her hand fell slowly away from her mouth. She sank down onto her knees, bringing her immense form level with him. Her amber eyes glistened in the moonlight, searching his face desperately for any crack, any false note. Say it again, she begged. I love you. She shuddered, and in that moment, all the walls she had built collapsed. She reached for him, fingers trembling as they extended toward his frame. She held him to her chest, cradling him near her heart, the thunder of its beat surrounding him like a living drum. I have dreamed of hearing those words, she whispered, voice breaking. Dreamed, and cursed myself for it. And now they are real, and I do not know if I am strong enough to believe them. He pressed his palm against her skin, warm and vibrant beneath its blue hue. Then let me help you believe. Every day, every moment, if that's what it takes. She drew him closer, so close he could feel the tremor of her breath against him. You are a speck in my hand, she murmured. A fragile spark against my vastness. And yet, you make me feel as though I am the fragile one. Maybe we both are, he said softly. And maybe that's why we fit. For a long while they stayed like that, wrapped in silence, their hearts speaking louder than any words. She held him gently, as though afraid he might vanish, and he let himself be held, unashamed. At last she spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. There is a ritual among my people. A way of binding two lives together. No one has ever asked me to perform it. I never thought I would. He looked up at her, determination burning in his eyes. Tell me what it is. Her gaze softened, almost reverent. It is not done lightly. To take part is to claim each other before the stars themselves. It cannot be undone. Then show me, he said firmly. Show me what it means to be yours. Her lips parted, trembling between a sob and a smile. She pressed her forehead gently against him, vast and tender, the gesture carrying more weight than any embrace. Tomorrow, she whispered. When the moons rise together, I will take you there. And if you still mean what you say, we will be bound. He closed his eyes, letting her warmth surround him, and whispered back. I'll be there. With you. And though uncertainty loomed, his unit's recall, their world's prejudice, the sheer impossibility of it all, either cared. For in that moment, soldier and giantess had confessed what no command could silence. They belonged to each other. The next night, the world seemed to hold its breath. The soldier made his way through the sleeping camp, heart pounding, every step a defiance of orders. He carried no pack, no weapon. Only the quiet determination that nothing, not even the iron command of his superiors, would keep him from her. She was waiting just beyond the ruins, her figure a dark silhouette against the glow of the twin moons rising together. The pale light traced the lines of her tall form, her long gown flowing around her legs, her hair catching silver streaks with every whisper of wind. You came, she said quietly, though there was no surprise in her voice. I told you I would, he replied, breathless from more than the walk. Her amber eyes lingered on him, soft but heavy with meaning. Then come with me. The place we go is sacred. They walked side by side. Each of her strides was nearly 3 of his, yet she slowed to match him, a subtle grace in her pace. He could feel the faint tremor of her steps through the ground, not earth-shaking, but a steady reminder of her presence, larger than him, stronger than him, and yet careful, always careful. The path wound up a low ridge, until they reached a plateau overlooking the glowing crystal fields. There, ringed by ancient stones, lay a circle etched deep into the rock. The carvings shimmered faintly with light, runes that pulsed as if alive. She stopped at its edge, gazing down with solemnity. "This is where my ancestors came to vow themselves to one another. It is said the stars hear what is spoken here, and what they hear cannot be undone." He stepped closer, awed. "And you want us to?" Her eyes softened. "To bind. If you truly wish it." He nodded without hesitation. "I do." A silence stretched, the weight of it immense. She drew a long breath, then began to speak, her deep voice carrying like a hymn across the stones. "My people say that when two souls meet and choose one another, they stand within the circle as equals, no matter their stature, no matter their birth. They place tokens before them, something that carries their truth. And they vow aloud to walk together." She reached into the folds of her gown and produced a necklace, crude but beautiful, twine braided with a shard of glowing crystal at its center. The shard pulsed faintly, alive with pale light. "This was my mother's," she said softly. "The only adornment she ever owned. I swore I would keep it until I found someone who saw me not as labor, not as burden, but as woman." She knelt, placing it gently on the carved stone. The soldier's throat tightened. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the only personal item he carried, a thin metal tag, scratched and worn, stamped with his name and number. He pulled it free, the chain rattling faintly. "This is all I have," he admitted. "But it's me. My life, my duty, everything I've been. And I'd rather give it to you than anyone else." He laid it beside her crystal shard. Their offerings glowed faintly in the moonlight. She looked at him, amber eyes shimmering. "Now we vow." He nodded, heart hammering. She lifted her head, voice steady though he could hear it tremble at its edges. "I vow that though you are small and I am large, though you are of another world and I of this one, I will not let our differences divide us. I will shield you from scorn, hold you in respect, and walk every step as your equal." Her words echoed in the circle, resonant and alive. He drew in a breath. "And I vow that though the world may say we don't belong, I will never leave your side. I'll stand with you against their mockery, hold you when you feel alone, and love you, not in spite of what you are, but because of it." The runes flared brighter, light washing over them both. The circle thrummed like a heartbeat, acknowledging their vow. She lowered herself to her knees fully, bringing her gaze level with his. For once, their eyes met without him craning his neck. Her lips trembled into a smile. "Then we are bound," she whispered. He stepped forward, reaching for her hand. Her fingers were long, each as thick as his wrist, but not impossibly huge. He fit his hand into hers, their palms pressing together. The warmth that surged through him was more than flesh. It was the weight of the vow, the truth of what they had done, two lives bound not by blood or race, but by choice. She leaned closer, her forehead lowering until it brushed gently against his. He closed his eyes, letting the contact ground him, a gesture both intimate and reverent. When they pulled apart, either spoke for a long moment. Only the stars bore witness, the runes glowing softly at their feet. Finally, she said, her voice trembling with wonder, "I never thought this night would come. That anyone would choose me." He squeezed her hand firmly. "Then believe it. Because I have." Her smile widened, radiant and real, and in its glow he saw the life they could build together, despite worlds, despite doubts, despite everything. The morning after the ritual, the soldier walked back into camp with dirt on his boots and the faint glow of crystal dust clinging to his uniform. His squad mates noticed. They eyed him curiously as he packed his gear into a crate, but none spoke. Soldiers had their suspicions, their rumors, but they also had an instinct for things best left unspoken. By midday, the whispers had spread beyond the camp. In the village, mothers tugged their children closer as he passed, muttering about the human who kept company with the giantess. Men exchanged sharp looks, some amused, others disgusted. And yet, mixed within the disdain were threads of something else, curiosity, unease, the dawning realization that what they mocked had been made sacred by the old ritual. She walked beside him that evening, her head high though he could feel the tension in her stride. She was not so vast that her presence blotted out the streets, but she was large enough that every glance lingered, every whisper sharpened. Still, she refused to shrink. The necklace at her throat, the glowing shard of her mother's crystal, hung visibly, her vow worn proudly. "They will not accept it," she murmured, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "They will say it is folly, that I am a fool clinging to an off-worlder." "Then let them talk," he replied. "We know the truth." Her amber eyes softened at his steadiness, though the corners of her lips tightened against old wounds. That night she took him home. Her family's dwelling was small for her size, low ceilings that forced her to duck, narrow spaces where she moved carefully. Her parents were there, weary from labor, their hands rough and calloused. They looked up when she entered with the human beside her. For a moment, silence. Her father's eyes widened, flicking between the soldier and the crystal shard glowing faintly at her chest. Her mother's breath caught, her hands covering her mouth. "You did it," her mother whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. "You bound." The giantess lowered her head, not in shame but in reverence. "Yes. And I chose him." Her father stepped forward slowly, his gaze heavy with disbelief. "A human," he said, voice gruff. "The village will laugh. They will curse. They will say you shamed our name." The soldier's chest tightened, but before he could speak, she raised her chin. "Let them. I am no one's shame. Not anymore." Her voice quivered with strength, each word a blade against the years of silence she had endured. Her mother crossed the room, towering over both of them, and cupped her daughter's face in her roughened hands. "You are happy?" she asked gently. "Yes," the giantess whispered. "For the first time in my life, I am happy." Her mother's tears spilled freely as she drew her daughter into a careful embrace. Her father stood still, silent, then sighed, shoulders sagging. He looked at the soldier, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "You are small," he said bluntly. The soldier gave a crooked smile. "I've noticed." For a heartbeat, the old man studied him. Then, slowly, he nodded. "But you are brave. Brave enough to face her, brave enough to face them all. That is more than I expected. If you have truly bound yourself, then you are one of us now." The soldier bowed his head, not out of deference to tradition, but out of respect. That night they ate together. The portions were absurd, the stew pot large enough that he nearly disappeared behind his bowl, but he endured the laughter, even joining in when he spilled half the broth across his lap. The warmth of her family's hearth spread into his bones, and for the first time since deployment, he felt not like a soldier on foreign soil, but like a man finding a home. The days that followed were not without struggle. The garrison commander barked when he failed to appear at roll call. Reports marked him absent. His name would soon be on lists, and not the kind a soldier wanted. But none of that mattered when he walked the village streets at her side. People stared. Some whispered insults. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But there were also those who watched with something closer to awe. Children peeked from doorways, giggling when the giantess smiled at them. An elder muttered, "The old ways live again," before shuffling off with a knowing smile. She walked taller beside him now, shoulders squared, no longer hiding behind her hair. When the villagers hissed too big, she met their eyes and answered, not too big for him. And he, in turn, answered every whisper with the simple act of staying. One evening, as they returned from the market, she paused at the edge of the ruins where they had first met. The fading light painted her blue skin in shades of violet and gold. She looked down at him, amber eyes shining. "I used to sit here believing no one would ever look at me as anything more than burden," she said softly. "Now I walk through these streets with you at my side. The world feels different." He reached for her hand, his fingers slipping into the spaces between hers. "It is different," he said. "Because you believed in me, and I believed in you." Her lips curved into a smile, not shy, not guarded, but radiant, full of the woman she had always been beneath the weight of others' scorn. In that moment, the ruins felt less like a tomb of what had been and more like the foundation of what could be. The weeks that followed blurred into something he had never expected, a new rhythm, built not around military orders or drills, but around her. The garrison eventually marked him as absent without leave, his name carried off in reports and reprimands. He knew the consequences would catch up eventually, yet the longer he stayed, the less those distant threats mattered. Here, with her, he felt anchored in a way that uniform and rank had never given him. The villagers remained divided. Some mocked openly, others muttered, but slowly, cracks began to form in their certainty. It was hard to sneer when they saw her smile again. Hard to scorn when they heard laughter spilling from her family's doorway late at night, her deep voice mixing with his lighter one. Hard to deny the truth when the glow of the binding ritual still clung to her crystal shard, proof that what they shared was not some fleeting scandal, but a vow sanctified by their oldest traditions. Children were the boldest. They darted close when she walked the markets, giggling and tugging at her gown until she leaned down, smiling wide and mischievous. When the soldier walked beside her, they swarmed him too, peppering him with questions. Was it true that humans came from worlds of oceans? Was it true he had chosen her, even though she was so big? He always answered the last with a grin. She's not too big. She's exactly right. Her face would soften at that, every single time. One evening, as the moons rose together again, they sat on the same cliff where they had vowed themselves. The fields below shimmered, painting her blue skin in silver. She leaned back on her hands, her long legs stretching beside him, their size difference still stark but no longer a barrier. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly, her amber eyes searching his face. "Turning away from your duty? Binding yourself to me?" He didn't even hesitate. "No. Not for a second." Her lips parted in a soft smile, but her eyes carried lingering shadows. "I still hear their whispers. That I trapped you. That you stay out of pity." He shifted closer, resting his hand against hers. His palm didn't come close to covering the breadth of her fingers, but the contact was enough. "Do you feel pity when you look at me?" "No," she said at once, fierce and certain. "Then believe me when I say, I don't feel it either. What I feel is love." Her throat tightened. She turned her gaze back to the glowing fields, silence stretching between them. Finally, she exhaled, slow and trembling. "When I was young, I dreamed of walking these fields with someone who wouldn't fear me. I gave up on that dream long ago." He smiled softly. "Then let's bring it back." He stood and offered his hand. She hesitated, then let him pull at her. Not that he could move her enormous weight, but the gesture was enough. She rose, towering over him, and together they stepped off the ridge into the shimmering plants below. The crystal stalks brushed against her knees, while they rose almost to his chest. They glowed brighter with every touch, leaving trails of light as they walked. She bent slightly, her fingers brushing over the tops, and for the first time he saw her expression not lined with sadness, but radiant with wonder. They walked until they reached the river, where glowing waters twisted like molten silver. She knelt beside it, dipping her hand in. The light clung to her skin, cascading down her arm. She looked back at him, a mischievous gleam in her amber eyes. "You would drown in this," she teased, flicking droplets that sparkled across his uniform. He laughed. "Then I guess I'll stay here on the bank, cheering you on." Her laughter rang out, deep and melodic, rolling across the valley. She stretched out beside him, her head tilted to the stars, and sighed with something that sounded like peace. "This is what I wanted," she whispered. "Not riches, not status. Just someone who sees me. Someone who stays." He turned on his side, studying her profile, the curve of her cheek, the glow of her crystal necklace, the strength in her body tempered by the gentleness in her eyes. "Then we're both exactly where we're supposed to be." They lay there until the night deepened, until the stars burned bright above them. The soldier knew his old life was gone. There would be consequences someday, questions, perhaps even punishment, but those were far-off storms. Here in this valley, with her beside him, he had already made his choice. When they rose to leave, she paused, looking down at him with a rare, vulnerable smile. "Do you know what they will call us?" "What?" "A bonded pair," she said, almost shyly. A title reserved for those who choose each other, no matter what the world says. It means family. It means forever. He reached for her hand again, threading his fingers through hers. Then that's what we are. As they walked back through the glowing fields, their silhouettes stretched long across the light. A soldier from a distant world, a giantess who had once thought herself unlovable, bound not by blood or tradition alone, but by the defiant choice to love across every barrier. And though the path ahead would not be easy, they walked it together. Always together.